So should you buy this as a modern classic? Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video, which is a special video for a number of reasons. Firstly, because it features the car that got me into fast Audis 14 years ago, and that was also the first car I ever drove around the Nürburgring's Nordschleife. It is the original Audi S3 Quattro. Now, if that wasn't special enough, this immaculate example you see here is a recent addition to Audi UK's heritage fleet, and I'm privileged to be the first recipient of its keys. And that distinctive number plate there should tell you this is more than just any ordinary Audi S3. The other reason I wanted to make the video was because I feel that the original S3 is a classic waiting in the wings with prices just on the cusp of shooting up. And I wanted to explain to you why this is probably one of the best modern classics you can buy today. So without any further ado, let's have a closer look at the original Audi S3. Okay guys, firstly let's step back to 1999 when the Audi S3 was launched. It is of course based on the original A3 that came out a few years earlier, and that was a groundbreaking car for Audi because it was their first sort of compact hatchback car, apart from, well, if you exclude the Audi 50, which was a sort of Europe only Mark I Polo based car that we never saw over here in the UK. But this was, yeah, a proper big seller for Audi, and it went right up against the Golf 4, which was launched just about a few months afterwards. And this had a much more premium feel, and the styling was a little bit more attractive. I still remember seeing them for the first time, and they were just stunning. I really wanted one. They really nailed the desirability. Now, when the S3 came along, it capitalised on all that want factor. Not only in the way it looked, it's a wide arch car, and just the details are pretty amazing. Back then, if you put it into context, the Golf GTI, if you paid for the top model, had just 150 horsepower. This had 210. Yes, there were later versions with 225, but there wasn't an awful lot in it, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, as somebody in their late 20s back then who was driving, I think, a Mark III Golf GTI, this was the car that I was yearning to own, and a lot of people were as well, and it was really the car. Okay, the reviews on it were a bit mixed. People were thinking it'd be like a Lancia Delta Integrale for the noughties, but it didn't turn out like that. It was just a nice, comfortable, refined cruiser with a very strong turn of speed, and of course four-wheel drive as well. So yeah, they sold quite a few, and I eventually got my first one in 2006, and I still remember the day driving it. In fact, it was delayed because the guy who owned it had ordered an R32, and it had turned up as a manual when he'd ordered a DSG, so he just waited. That was another few months wait. I remember now, July 2006, going to Norwich and meeting the guy in the train station. I'd bought his Mark II off him before, and then I think within a few weeks I'd been invited to go to the Nürburgring, took this car, and I had a really good time in it, yeah. And then I think a few months later I got into S4 and RS4, so this really did ignite my passion for the Audi brand, and I'm sure it did for many people. There'll be lots of S3 owners out there with really fond memories of them. Anyway, enough chat about my memories with this car. Let's now have a look around the outside it and pick up what makes this different from the standard A3. Okay, let's start off then by talking about this particular car's history, because the number plate will give you a clue that it's a bit of a special one. MTM are a tuning company based in Germany. They're run by a guy called Roland Mayer, who was in charge of Audi's rally program back in the Quattro days. That's quite a thing to have on your CV. He has a UK importer called QST. They're based in Haywards Heath, and they're run by a guy called Kim Collins. And this was Kim's mum's car. Now, it's not been extensively modified. They just did a stage 1 remap on it. And I was offered it back in February, but I had a lot on my plate, and I mentioned it to the guys at Audi UK, and they loved it. They went out and bought it, and they've spent the last few months getting it in tip-top condition. Now, they normally wouldn't buy a modified car, but because MTM are so closely aligned with the factory, they were very happy to take this on board, and it's going to be available to the press to drive very soon. It's actually been bought to support the launch of the Audi S3 in the UK, which happens very shortly, so it should be on display somewhere next to the new car, looking pretty cool. But yeah, because I found this car for Audi UK, they let me have the first drive in it, so it's really a privilege to be able to share this car with you guys today. Right, let's have a closer look at it then. So firstly, let's talk about the colour. It's not black. It might look a bit black in this light, but it's actually Goodwood green. This is not a special order colour, but you'd have to be quite special to order it, because most people ordered the blues and silvers and blacks, and there's also a lovely dolphin grey, I think, as well. It's the pearlescent colour. It's also used on the RS4 B5, and it wasn't a very good seller back in the day. If you bought one of these and tried to sell it secondhand, you'd probably struggle because greens were not cool. But right now, today, this is becoming a bit of a cult colour. Well, it is on social media anyway. Whether actually people really want to go out and buy Goodwood green Audis, I'm not so sure about. But yeah, I think it looks stunning. It's got the standard 17-inch Avis wheels. 17 sound tiny today, don't they? But on this car, they look just right. They've got 225, 45, 17 tyres. You can spec an 18-inch wheel that looks like the 10 spokes on the TT, but you lose a lot of the character of the car by doing that, because these are distinctly S model wheels, while the multi-spokes are just a nice Audi wheel. We've got 312mm brakes, which they're nothing special really. They're on TTs from 150 horsepower upwards. So yeah, you probably would want to upgrade them if you're going to go on track. At the back, we've got vented rear discs because it's a high performance version. The lower powered ones are just solid. Now this car comes from an era when Audis were relatively subdued. There's not an awful lot of gilding on it at all to make it stand out as something special. This particular example has got the alloy mirror covers, and I think they are actually metal on this cold day. Yeah, they're pretty cold. But that was an optional extra, so they don't all have that, and it's probably popular in Germany to mark your car out as something special when people look at it in the rear view mirror on the Autobahn like that. But in every other respect, it's a very subdued car, and no worse for it. What you do get though, it's much more expensive for Audi to do this and to give it silver bits in the grille like they do on the later cars. You get wide arches. So things were a bit confused at Audi back in the day, because this is just an S model, but it's a wide arch car. Normally that's reserved for RSs, but there was no RS of this particular generation. The moulding at the bottom of the door is also bigger to fill in sort of the arches better and give it a sort of butcher stance. So yeah, it's a great looking car. At the back, there's not an awful lot really to mark it out. This grey inlay is unique to the S3, and it stands out a lot more on lighter colours. We've got a twin tailpipe exhaust, but everything else, lights, all this is the same. Even the spoiler is not particularly special. But this is probably my favourite era of Audi, because they had like an underlying menace to them without all the bling. And you can be confident this was designed for our European tastes, not for the Far East, which is what you feel the modern cars are designed to appeal to. Right, let's now have a look inside. Okay, so standard on the S3 are these Recaro sport seats. They're not buckety in any way. They're just designed to be comfortable on long distances, and they give you electrical adjustment of the height and the backrest, but you have to move them manually back and forth. I think that's lumbar as well. So yeah, pretty good seats. In this car, they're silver leather, which wasn't the most desirable colour. Everybody wanted black. You could also get Alcantara and leather and various different combinations. But I think they work okay with the green exterior, which gives it a real classy look. Got S3 on the sill covers there, but there's not an awful lot to mark it out as special, to be perfectly honest. We've got S3 on the rev counter, which takes me back 14 years to sitting in my garage thinking, wow, I've got myself my own S3. I've got S3 on the steering wheel, and please note it's a round steering wheel. Quattro badge there, but that's not exclusive to the S3. There's a 1.8T Quattro as well. Not an awful lot else. Just a plain leather gear knob that has worn very well. It's done 98,000 miles, this car. And yeah, it's a pretty good advert for the brand. I would say particularly the fact none of these buttons are worn out. It looks, yeah, it looks like new. We've got a black headlining, which gives it a little bit of a sporty look, but combined with the lighter interior bits, it does actually feel, yeah, quite a soothing place to be. It's not one of those big black cold bunker cabins that you get on Audi sometimes. One little criticism of this car, and it applied to my own one back in the day, is that you cannot get low enough. So this is the lowest setting for the seat. It's not low enough. I want to be a good few inches further down to have a sporty driving position. It's just not possible in this car. It's a bit surprising Audi got the ergonomics of it so wrong, but they did get what's under the bonnet so right. So I think I can forgive them. So here we have the relatively common 20 valve, don't be confused by this, that's 5 valve per cylinder, turbocharged petrol engine, 1.8 litre, producing in this car 210 horsepower, 270 newton meters of torque, which equates to a 0 to 60 time of 6.6 seconds, so not bad for a car back then, and that was standard. There was a 225 version that came a bit later, shaved a few points of a second off the 0 to 60, but if you're going to remap a 210, the 225 is pointless anyway, and this has been remapped by QST MTM. I reckon it's 250, 260 horsepower, which if you think of that 20 years ago, is pretty amazing. Now, I wouldn't buy one of these cars lightly because they are 20 years old and there are quite a few things to look for. I did a buying guide for the TT for Audi Driver magazine a few years ago. That ran to 10 pages and I didn't even cover everything. So just think about that as how many things you can find wrong on a TT. They all apply to this car because it is basically a TT in an A3 body. It's even got the Haldex all-wheel drive system. Again, quite a bit to go wrong with that. Right, let's now go and drive this Audi S3. Okay guys, here we are behind the wheel of the S3 on a lovely dry British country road. And the first thing you notice is that it takes a bit of muscle to drive this car. The steering's quite heavy, the clutch is quite heavy, but I actually quite like that because it makes it feel like a mechanical car to drive like they used to be. We don't have variable assistance power steering. We might have a hydraulic clutch, but it's not taken all the feel out of it. It might have got a bit heavy with age, to be perfectly honest, but I like it. What I don't like though is the driving position. I notice I'm seeing a lot further over behind the instrument cluster cowling than I'd really like to, because I'm looking down on it when I really want to be down here, and it feels actually worse now I'm driving and I'm sort of comfy in the seat for driving than it did when I was doing the bit about the interior. But let's try and put that to one side because there's a lot to like about this car. The brakes, they're perfectly adequate for the road. They've got quite a bit of feel actually, which is because they're nice and old style, not over servoed. But the engine is the masterpiece. It revs. It should not rev like this. That's incredible. Now I'm sure part of that is to do with the remap. Maybe it's more than a remap, but I've contacted QST, they said it's just a remap. But that reminds me of an RS4B5, and that engine was fettled by Cosworth to rev. Turbos don't really rev like that. I just want to do that again. Oh, that's probably time to talk about the chassis because, yeah, it's not as confidence inspiring as a modern hot hatch. It's got a fair bit of float, which makes you slightly nervous, and if you encounter mid-corner bumps, it does unsettle the car. But once it's sort of loaded up, much like a lot of older performance cars, it actually feels quite good as long as the road stays smooth, which luckily it is here. It's also a nice small car. This is a narrow road and you've got a bit of room to manoeuvre, so we're in third gear, which is perfectly fine. Let's just tip it in here. Oh, it feels, yeah, initially you think, and then it actually settles down and it's good. We'll do that again. Yeah, it's four-wheel drive, but you're not really going to feel the effects of that on the road. Its natural tendencies to understeer. Four-wheel drive really doesn't have much of an effect on that. What it does have an effect of is standing start. So, I mean, it's dry now, so I'm probably not going to do anything apart from maybe blow the drive shafts off it, but let me just demonstrate. Yeah, so it's good. What's weird with these cars is they've got ESP as well, so it's really hard to work out what's going to work first. Is the ESC going to kill the spin, or is the four-wheel drive going to make you just go anyway? So they're kind of a bit nicer to drive with the ESP off because you feel the mechanics of the four-wheel drive a little bit more. Let's just turn around and do that again. So second gear, bit of lag, 3,000, bang, and then it just goes right up to the rev limiter, which, please note, Audi, I didn't touch or hit then at all. It's perfectly fine. So yeah, engine we love. Chassis, let's see what we can do. Third gear's fine for this one. Again, nice and small. So when you have a car coming the other way, you've got room to get out of its way, even though it's slightly over the centre of the road. Yeah, gear shift. Do you know, I've never really liked the shift in the Mark IV platform cars, whether it's a Mark IV Golf GTI or a TT, but this is actually really quite sweet, which is just as well because you'll want to use it. It's a 6-speed box as well. Now this is my commute. I know this road pretty well. I take these corners at the speed limit of 60, no problem, which we're doing now. And this car feels like it could do it a lot faster than that. So it might be 20 years old, but it's still got it, the S3. It really has. Yeah, I think I better slow down a bit now. So should you buy this as a modern classic? Definitely, for sure. It's not too old. There's still quite a few for sale. They're relatively easy to fix and specialists know what they're doing with them. I think it will go up in price. You can buy something from about 2,500 now. One of the best examples is optimistically at about 9,500. It's been there for a couple of months. So that's kind of telling you they're going to go that way, but be prepared to spend some money on them. There are some other channels with S3 project cars and you can see, yeah, they are, if you're not sensible with your buying, they can be a bit of a money pit. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this Volks Wizard video. I certainly have. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, please comment, please share. And I don't push subscriptions enough, but it's really important that you subscribe. We're still getting 80% of views from non-subscribers, so please push that subscription button. It's free to do so. Click the notifications bell as well, and you'll get early notification when a video goes live. Right, I'm off to enjoy this, so I'll see you for the next one soon, guys.